So SB1414 has passed. I'm not really surprised the way things were going. I'm very disappointed though. For those of you who've watched the channel and such, I've made it very obvious that I wanted to move to Florida eventually and do all outdoor enclosures. It just really was inspiration to me, seeing them all outdoors and everything. And I've just been thinking about that, reflecting on it, now that it's not really a possibility anymore since I have a Tegu. But even if I didn't, I'd be really hesitant to even move to Florida just because there's gonna be more and more laws coming, and it really made me think, especially with this passing, what's in store for reptiles and legislation in the future. It's pretty grim in my mind. If you've watched some of my streams with Dakota in the past, we've done a few different types of streams. We've gotten into a few discussions about legislation and where its place is in the reptile hobby. And I've been sort of in the middle, while Dakota's been much more anti-legislation. And I'm an idealist, and I think that's why I was more in the middle. I would love legislation to properly monitor the welfare of reptiles, but we live in a society, at least in the US, where that's not happening, and people don't make laws, politicians don't make laws for functionality, for a purpose. They make it to look good, and I'm really disappointed that, you know, that's just how it is in life and in our government. I cited in my sort of three-part series I did on this ban, and I know it wasn't the most interesting of content, and my editing was a lot worse back then. But yeah, I cited some research and such showing that a lot of what they were trying to do with this bill really isn't going to do much in the research we have out there that's related. I'm really disappointed that the governor of Florida signed this into law. I'm really disappointed in Senator Mayfield. I really think this is just a publicity act. And the sad thing is that there's an issue out there that really does need to be addressed. Everybody who's against this law that's a reptile advocate understands there's an issue. It's just this is not going to solve it. This is not going to do anything. And it makes me even more mad that this law is being signed in. It's not even going to actually solve a problem. It's just, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I know this is the society we live in, but there's really no purpose to this law. It's going to frustrate people. I mean, I don't really even know people who are for this law. I do believe, I think some hunters and trappers, there's a group on Facebook somewhere who have shown support for this law. But I've only seen opposition, and that's where the scary part comes in. The scary part comes in where Senator Mayfield, when she's up for re-election, whatever she's going to do in the future, she's going to say she addressed the Tegu problem, the invasive species problem. And the other side of the coin of there being not a large population in the US of reptile keepers compared to the population of the US overall, is that people are going to think that just because she put this law in, that solved the issue, that's going to address it and take care of everything. They're not going to read into it. They're not going to look into the actual facts and how this trends over time. I promise you, you know, if we look at this law and how it affected the population in the wild of tegus and green iguanas 5 years down the line, it's not going to do anything. I am very confident in that, and I'm a very factual, research-based person. I'm getting a PhD. I believe in science and research, and I really predict that this is going to have really minimal effect. But residents, you know, they see these reptiles out and about in Florida, and most people just think of them as a nuisance, and they see a reptile law to go against these invasive species and these wild populations that are supposed to take down the population and fix things, and they're going to think, okay, Senator Mayfield, she went ahead and she fixed this problem. Nothing changed, and they're gonna buy it, and that's the really upsetting thing to me. It's just so much wrong with this, and I'm just very frustrated, and I think this really sets a precedent to get on to really another major point for the rest of the US in terms of reptile laws. It's really hard and depressing to me, sort of, you know, because we're such a small society, a small portion, like I mentioned earlier, of the US population. Even if all of us came out in force, you know, it's really a very slim minority of the United States citizens. There's not a big base of reptile keepers. And overall, I really don't think that a senator, anybody in government's gonna think of our population when going up for re-election. Even if the whole population is, you know, in an uproar about something, it's not gonna swing a vote in my mind, or at least to a politician swing a vote in their mind. So I don't really think, I always think we're gonna be an afterthought. I don't really think that there's ever gonna be any pro-laws for us unless there's a dramatic change in society with animals and animal keeping. I really think any laws going forward in the future are just gonna be more anti and anti-reptile. And of course we have the whole Tiger King thing changing or giving a social, you know, precedent, I guess, for exotic keeping. And I know that's not reptile related, but I've also discussed this a few times in the past, how sort of the Tiger King's gonna reflect upon the reptile hobby. We are exotics. We're not as exotic as tigers, but we are exotics, and I think it's, you know, gonna paint a social perception to people of what the exotic hobby overall is about, keeping animals that are not typical. And then on the other hand, you know, you have all these wild feral cats out there. I mean, I live in a very rural part on the eastern seaboard of the United States, and there's a lot of free roaming cats out there that I just see at night walking around the neighborhood. And, you know, especially in Australia, that's a major area where feral cats are taking over and really destroying wild populations. But you touch a cat, you know, do anything in the United States with cat laws, you get what I mean? People are going to be in an uproar. There's going to be a lot of cat owners that are going to make a senator very scared to touch, you know, how people can take care of their cats and such. It just stinks because we don't have that for the reptile community. And US Ark, this is not like a bash on US Ark or anything. I don't want people to ever interpret that. I know I didn't really bring them up at all, but it's not. I mean, they're doing their best. I'm a big supporter of them. They're an advocate for us, really the only major advocate for us when we're going against people like PETA, who get so much more money in legislation. So I really support them, and you guys really should support them. I'm about to do, I think their silver membership, that's $250 a year. That's the best I can afford. I'm about to sign up for that. I've been meaning to do it for the last couple weeks. I've been making a little bit more money this summer, but I'm gonna support them. I want to help out. It's just gonna keep going down this downward trend in support of reptile keepers and exotic animal keepers if we don't do something about it. And money really is the only thing that talks, and it sucks, but it does. I guess this goes into the next kind of part of the discussion and sort of the title of this video. What's next? What do we do? Like I said, we are a very small percentage of the US population, but there are still things you can do. Supporting US Ark is one of them. I really recommend, if you have any extra money, donate to them. They are our voice, and like I said, they're going against other organizations that make a lot more money than us. They can really use our help going against any of these things. They're really our only voice in politics right now, so I really recommend supporting US Ark if you can. Additionally, the number one thing you can do in my mind, and it's the easiest by far, is be a responsible exotic owner, even if it's not reptiles. If you're not watching this and you don't keep reptiles, if you have an exotic, be responsible. You see so many pieces of news that are blown up in the Northeast about how someone's reptile got out and it's this stinky little, you know, bearded dragon, I don't know, just something that's really not going to cause harm, let alone live for probably that long in the Northeast. And people start freaking out because they don't understand reptiles. So what you can do is really just don't release to the wild. I mean, I'm not saying that's not part of the issue. There is a lot of people who get an exotic animal and release it, and that is a problem. And the thing you can do to make us look good and you know, deter laws away from the reptile hobby is be responsible. Do not create a reason for people to create laws. If you don't want a reptile anymore, don't release it to the wild. That's just not a good way to go about it, and you can cause or contribute to an invasive species problem, which if you are an exotic advocate, you should be against making an invasive species population, because that causes a lot of natural disturbances that aren't good. So be a good responsible owner. If you don't want your animal anymore, try to give it to someone else. Try to find a way to give it to what is it called, sanctuary or something like that. Just some way that you don't release it to the wild. Get it some proper care though. Don't be irresponsible. It's just the best way you can do it, and the best way you can make politicians ignore the hobby and not, you know, draw attention to it. Another big thing you could do that's really not that difficult, it's just general education of reptiles. like I said, whenever a reptile gets out in the Northeast, no matter how non-dangerous it is, people are gonna freak out about it. People freak out about things they don't understand. That's very typical amongst many things. So just general conversation about reptiles, how cool they can be, how calm they can be, to make people less afraid of them, that's gonna go a long way. It doesn't need to be this whole speech. You don't need to get in front of an audience. It could just be talking to your neighbor about your reptiles, showing them your reptile room, and just showing that they're very calm animals. And most of the time, reptiles, they don't attack in aggression. They attack in defense, and people need to realize that and not be afraid of them. My mom, she's terrified of snakes. She's really terrified of pretty much any reptile, but since I've gotten into the reptile hobby, she's been a lot more tolerant and curious about my lizards. Now, her stance on snakes is still a little not that great, but I can see that she's opening up, you know, her mind more so to the idea of reptiles not being super scary. So you can see how education really can make an impact and change people's mind. People are just afraid of things they don't know about and don't really have any experience with. Alright guys, so that's gonna wrap up this video. I really said everything I wanted to say. I want to do a lot more of these opinion-based videos and such like that. I made a post about that on the community page. Check that out if you can. It's gonna be really the overall theme for the channel moving forward. A lot of content I've really been wanting to do and finally really are gonna actually do it. Or is it actually gonna do? I don't know English. Anyway guys, a couple announcements before we wrap it up. Big shout out to the patrons. I want to thank Houston H, Herp M, David T, Angela L, and Smoothcat for supporting the Patreon. It really means a lot to me. If you guys want to support the channel as well, check the top right, as little as $1 a month. Interested in some cool reptile merch? Check the top right, and there will be 4 designs that you can choose from. If you're into any of them, you want to check the description. There's a Teespring link there in which you can go and purchase some of these items. Thanks again, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you Friday in the next video.